Reports from the US are suggesting the Biden administration paused a shipment of bombs to Israel last week. Now, according to a quoted US official, this was over concerns that Israel would move ahead with its planned ground assault on Rafah in southern Gaza. The details of the decision are emerging after Israeli tanks moved in to take control of the Gazan side of the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. The incursion has left the prospect of a new ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas hanging in the balance.
Makeshift shelters in a sea of rubble and debris. Khan Yunis is a ruin. Yet thousands of Palestinians have begun to return after Israel ordered them to evacuate parts of the southernmost city of Rafah. Israeli forces have seized control of the Rafah crossing on the border with Egypt. The attack came just hours after Hamas says it accepted a ceasefire proposal, one that Israel says was unacceptable.
The Hamas proposal was intended to prevent the entry of our forces into Rafah. It did not happen, as the War Cabinet unanimously determined the Hamas proposal is very far from Israel's necessary requirements.
The attack was not the full-scale ground offensive that many have feared. But in seizing the checkpoint, Israeli forces have halted all humanitarian aid passing through the crossing.
The two main arteries for getting aid into Gaza is currently choked off. Indeed, this morning is one of the darkest in this 7-month-long nightmare.
With famine already spreading across Gaza, the loss of aid is devastating for its civilians. Ceasefire negotiations are ongoing, but they stand on a knife's edge.
We are at a decisive moment for the Palestinian and Israeli people and for the fate of the entire region. An agreement between the government of Israel and the leadership of Hamas is essential to stop the unbearable suffering of Palestinians in Gaza and of the hostages and their families.
Almost half of Gaza's population fled their homes to shelter in Rafah. Now they must flee again. But with so much of the territory in ruins, many are losing hope.
I'm tired of life because there is no life in Gaza. Gaza has no future. When are our children going to learn if the schools are closed? Gaza has no health facilities and no hospitals. What kind of life is this?
All eyes are now on the negotiations in Cairo, as mediators attempt to salvage whatever remains of a possible ceasefire.
OK, let's cross straight to our correspondent in Jerusalem, Tanya Kma. Tanya, so Israel is saying that it's conducting a limited scope operation in Rafah. What more do we know at this point?
Well, there have been reports that there have been air bombardments across the Gaza Strip in different locations, but of course, very much is centered on the eastern part of Rafah in the Jenin neighborhood or Husa neighborhood, the village of Husa. There are bombardments, and what we're hearing, heavy fighting going on there. While people were told, of course, to evacuate from that area since Monday and to move to what the Israeli army described as the expanded humanitarian zone. I talked to some people here in the past days. Some have left immediately. They said, we don't want to stay here. This is risky. But some have also said, they don't really know where to go. They have a large family. They don't see themselves sitting or being in a tent again, and they simply don't also feel safe to move. So some have also not left to this protected area, but to Khan Yunis or further to the middle area. And another concern, of course, especially for the aid agencies, are the crossings. We heard it in the report. Israel has said they're controlling now the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing. That was the only gateway, of course, for many Palestinians to leave in a limited number, but also the major hub for aid to come in, as well as the Kerem Shalom crossing. There was a mortar attack on Sunday, which killed 4 Israeli soldiers. Since then, both crossings are closed, so it's very hard to get any humanitarian aid in the south.
OK, and meanwhile, we're hearing reports that the US paused a shipment of bombs to Israel because of its concerns over an Israeli offensive in Rafah. What more can you tell us about those reports?
Yeah, there were reports in the American media, and that is based on an unnamed American official who has confirmed that the United States has indeed paused a shipment of bombs, and that shipment would have included about 3,500 bombs, some of them the 2,000-pound bombs, which are, as analysts say, very problematic when it comes to bombs in a densely populated area, as we've seen across the Gaza Strip, but also if they would be used in a full incursion on Rafah. So we can see here the pressure is piling up on Israel, as the US, the United States and other countries have said they don't want to see a full incursion in Rafah. But there's also, of course, domestically some pressure on the United States, because this week it's actually the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He has to submit a report to Congress, and that report has to deal whether Israel has violated humanitarian international law while using US weapons in Gaza, and also whether Israel has impeded on US humanitarian efforts in Gaza.
OK, and just briefly, Tanya, if you could, ceasefire talks are continuing in Cairo. Do we know where the negotiations stand?
Well, we understand that Israel has sent a delegation, but it's described here as a low-level delegation of Israeli officials with a very limited mandate. Now, talks will continue, as you said, but it's unclear how both sides will actually bridge the gaps. And we heard from Hamas, they had agreed to an agreement. Israel had said this is a ruse, and Hamas had said, they want to see the full withdrawal from Gaza. They want to see a return of residents to the north. They want to see a permanent end to the war, and this is something Israel has always rejected. So we understand that today the CIA director Bill Burns will also come to Israel to talk to his counterpart, to talk to the Israeli Prime Minister. But there's a lot of pressure here domestically from people. They want to see a deal. They want to see the hostages being brought home, but also for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has a lot of pressure within his own cabinet to continue the war.
All right. DW correspondent in Jerusalem, Tanya Kma. Tanya, thank you. Now, Kareem Mohari is a journalist joining us now from the Egyptian capital, Cairo, where those ceasefire negotiations are taking place. Welcome, Kareem. How high are the hopes of achieving a deal this time?
Well, that they're still speaking and that we don't hear much about it is maybe a good sign. There is only really one official statement from one of the negotiators, a spokesperson of the Qatari foreign ministry, who says there are positive, there's progress, but there are still gaps to be filled. Now, the rest, what we hear is from media reports that are somehow leaked from both sides. For example, Hamas is saying that they got because they agreed to this exchange of hostages and Palestinian prisoners because they got some kind of US guarantees that this will be accompanied with the withdrawal of the Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip and a longer-term ceasefire. On the other side, the Israelis are saying that some of the sticking points are, for example, that Hamas is demanding that they have the full say in who is going to be released from the Palestinians from the Israeli prisons. Israel has no say in this matter. The Israelis want to have a veto power here. And there's also talk about the first phase, how many hostages are released now. We have, first it was 33, now the word is 18. It seems to be like for Hamas, this first phase is not the important phase. It's somehow kind of a confident building measure. And the most important phase for them is then the second phase. And then in the second phase, they really want to have guarantees that there will be some kind of permanent ceasefire, or as the Americans are saying, sustained calm.
Mm-hmm. OK. And while these talks are ongoing, what are you hearing from people who are inside Gaza in Rafah?
Despair, I would say. I mean, lots of people, people were displaced multiple times. Some of them, there's a family that was displaced 9 times. People run out of money. People don't know where to go. When they arrive at the new places, they see that they're absolutely not fit to receive so many people. And a lot of talk already was before here about the humanitarian situation because the crossings are closed. It's also the other way around, not only that there's no aid coming in, for example, there can be no injured right now coming out, which happened before when any seriously injured went out to Egypt to be treated there. And that's especially difficult because there's only one remaining hospital in Rafah, which is the Kuwaiti hospital. And other medical facilities were ordered to evacuate by the Israeli army. So also the situation of the health care system in Rafah is pretty dire.
Kareem Mohari in Cairo. Thank you so much, Kareem, for your analysis there.
You're welcome.